What's going on, YouTube gamers? Bonfire here, and recently there have been some rumors kind of floating about the interwebs about Bloodborne 2 coming out this year. And as many of you probably know, at least should know, I'm a huge Bloodborne fan, and the Souls games in general. So this gets me very, very excited, and frankly, I want to take a moment to talk about it. So the rumors come about because recently a couple of the game's producers, and hopefully I get these names right, Toriyama and Yamagiwa, did an interview with 4Gamer, which is a Japanese gaming outlet, and they talked about some of their upcoming projects. They said that they have 3 upcoming projects that include both existing and new IPs. That's a hint there, that's really exciting. And they had also mentioned that hopefully one of those projects will come out in 2017. Now, given the fact that Dark Souls 3 had just came out last year, and they had mentioned that that is the last of the Souls games, which kinda sucks to be honest, but also, From Software doesn't own the rights to Demon Souls, one of the other Souls-esque games, actually the game that started it all. That leaves Bloodborne. And so people are talking about Bloodborne 2 is real, it's coming, it has to be Bloodborne 2. And I'm just so giddy about the thought of that. I love Bloodborne. Bloodborne is one of my favorite games of all time, and it's the game that introduced me into the Souls games and the Souls franchise. It was the first one I played entirely all the way through, and I just fell in love with it. Few games have captured me in such a way that Bloodborne did, and it was a game that I couldn't put down because I feel like it's just so good. Now, having gone back and played some of the older Souls games, Dark Souls 2 and Demon Souls, haven't touched Dark Souls yet, it's the only one I haven't played, but I can see how Bloodborne really changed up the formula and introduced some new things. It kind of evolved that game. And most recently with Dark Souls 3 coming out, you can see Bloodborne's influence even on that game. Bloodborne changed up the combat. It made it more fluid, and they took away your shield so you couldn't block stuff, so you had to dodge stuff. And so it introduced a new combat style the Lost Souls players really didn't have experience to. That being my first, it took a while to get the hang of it, but now that's honestly how I play the rest of the games. Additionally, the game's design and aesthetics are another thing that really pulled me into it. It's got this Victorian Gothic setting, and quite honestly, it's beautiful. I think it's gorgeous. And it's just so dark and mysterious, and it really drew me in to that atmosphere. Level design is another thing that I think Bloodborne did really well. And even though some people have complained about Bloodborne's linearity, at least for the most part, I liked it because I like the fact that you could enter into a new area and work your way through it only to find the shortcut that leads you back to pretty much where you started or a place close to where you started, and it gives you that aha moment. Few games do that, and Bloodborne did that time and time again, at least for me. And lastly, one of the things I loved so much about Bloodborne were its boss battles. I really felt like the boss battles were just epic, and quite honestly, I live for the boss battles in the Souls games because they just do such an awesome job. But Bloodborne in particularly did really well. Again, having gone back and played some of the older Souls games, you can see what they changed up in Bloodborne. They added multiple phases to the bosses, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the first time they've ever done that in the Souls-like games. And again, they took that cue from Bloodborne and brought it over into Dark Souls 3, which made that game even better. Even in the game's DLC, which by the way is just phenomenal, probably one of the best DLCs out there for a game, so worth the price tag. Those boss battles, at least most of them, were not only extremely difficult, but were really epic and awesomely designed. They were just so good. So that leaves us with the question, why wouldn't From Software make Bloodborne 2? And I recently looked at the sales numbers of Bloodborne since the game released in 2015, and according to VG Charts, as of November 2016, the game has sold about 2.5 million copies. There's also been articles that shortly after the game was released in 2015, towards the end of that year, they had stated the game has exceeded their sales expectations. Now, 2.5 million may not sound like a lot, but I'd say that's pretty good for a new IP. And not every game can be compared to Call of Duty and its sales numbers. I mean, that's just a phenomenon. Now, if Bloodborne 2 ends up being real, fingers crossed there, we don't yet know if it's going to be a PlayStation exclusive like the first Bloodborne was, or if it's going to be a multi-platform title like the Souls games. And honestly, if I were PlayStation, I would probably levitate towards keeping Bloodborne exclusively on your platform. Because let's face it, PlayStation needs exclusives. Looking at the PlayStation 4's launch since 2013, there haven't been nearly as many exclusives as there were during the PlayStation 3 days. Sure, we've had some exclusive and some really good ones at that. Bloodborne obviously is one of them. Uncharted 4, Until Dawn is fantastic. Ratchet & Clank this last year was awesome. But there haven't been a ton of them like there were in years past. Now Sony has been making deals to get exclusive content like The Division with Destiny, now Call of Duty being released exclusively on the PlayStation or earlier on PlayStation as opposed to Xbox. But let's be honest, I really don't feel like that sells consoles. Now some may argue that Bloodborne isn't a console seller, and you may be right. I honestly don't know whether or not Bloodborne pushed PlayStation 4 units. I believe it did, probably not to the extent that, let's say, Uncharted 4 did, but the point I'm trying to make here is that PlayStation needs exclusives, and if they can get their hands on Bloodborne 2, I think it would help them in the long run. Take a look at what happened with Demon's Souls. They had Demon's Souls, PlayStation 3 exclusive. It was a fantastic game, won Game of the Year. However, they let From Software slip through the cracks. Next thing you know, Dark Souls comes out. It's across all platforms. And that's a franchise they could have had exclusively on the PlayStation. Now, it's awesome that it's available on all platforms. I'm all for that. More people get to play it, the better. But from a business perspective and Sony's perspective, they kind of let that one go. And Bloodborne, I feel like, could be the same. So what do you guys think? Bloodborne 2, is it real? Do you want it? I mean, I sure as heck do. I love Bloodborne. And if Bloodborne 2 gets announced anytime soon, I will probably lose my mind. But let me know what you guys think about all that crazy stuff that I just talked about down in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And well, until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.
Now come up, it's shady you now if you with me, put your hands up. On the fly, ladies, set a front, go and stand up. Fellas, if you see the one you want, it's time to man up. Like, hey, oh, and if you see